Right effort is the mental discipline or concentration aspect of the Eightfold Path. The other related limbs are mindfulness and concentration, or samadhi. When a proper relationship is maintained among these last three aspects of right concentration, in this case, right concentration being the segment, this third segment of the Eightfold Path, because there are three primary aspects to the path, this Eightfold Path. That's how it's organized. Through this, enlightenment can happen. Now, the first thing the student needs in order to maintain right effort is energy, or viriya in Pali. Energy is at the service of right effort. This is an essential factor that cannot be overlooked. Many people in the modern age are constantly tired from their busy and stressful lifestyles, which tend to include the overconsumption of coffee and energy drinks and being overworked. Now, these stimulants are more often than not draining us of our zeal and endurance, making our blood sugar levels irregular, so we become tired very easily after a dose of caffeine. So getting into this more, because it's pretty important in this modern age, for all of us, it's best to keep our caffeine intake in our functional minimum. Ideally, we shouldn't be drinking more than 2 cups, really, because caffeine is very strong. No more than that per day, because of the effect it has on the liver and the adrenal glands. It causes diabetes, as I've said in other videos, and it does this very easily. After months of just drinking lots of coffee, you can develop that. So, in fact, these glands, the endocrine system, the liver, adrenal glands in particular, and pineal gland, pituitary gland, these play a major role in clairvoyance and clairaudience and other powers, psychic abilities. But for those of us who just can't stay awake during the day, they just have to supplement a little bit with some coffee or tea. Otherwise, you'll just be falling asleep all the time. So it's for this reason, it's good to avoid heavy meals. If you can get by eating, maybe more frequently, but smaller meals, you'll keep your blood sugar regular, you'll keep your energy levels regular, won't get that crash after. And the Buddha also had his classical advice for inspiring and gathering energy, which included things like splashing cold water on your face, walking in the snow without your shoes on, or some otherwise cold environment to wake you up, and some other things too, other tips. So if you're someone who falls asleep easily, it's best to meditate whilst upright, for example, as opposed to laying down, reclined, or flat on your back. And on the contrary, when we find ourselves restless due to agitation or anxiety, we can use up some excess energy by exercising and turning to walking meditations before sitting back down for classic sitting meditation. Because it's also hard to get insight. Most people, their psychic mind doesn't really open up when they're awake in that beta state, that beta brainwave state when they're awake and walking. It's only a certain population of people can get insights when they're fully awake. And when they get a lot of insights and they see a lot of things, we call them schizophrenic. But that's part of schizophrenia, is just being able to see and hear things when you're awake. And when they're wise, it's intuition. It's not schizophrenia. It's nothing like it's not a problem, like a health issue. It's natural ability of the consciousness. Serenity meditations are effective for letting go of agitation and allowing the mind to sink deeper into itself. deeper. Sometimes you can, well, not so much into problems because that's analytical, but deeper into itself, into deeper planes. Energy fuels willpower or concentration. So the mind is not dull when one has sufficient energy. In addition to these basic adjustments, more advanced and specialized practices for gathering and managing energy should be practiced daily. These include pranayama, which I recommend at least 10 minutes a day. It's very good to just refuel your body. If you do this before bed, you'll fuel your body so that your tathagata or Tara can rest and recover and perform work when you're sleeping. And other things that gather energy are mantras, qigong, and tai chi. Yoga in the form of hatha yoga, the one that we all know, the stretching, those body positions, those open up channels, the unblock channels, energy can flow better. And tantra, which is the highest practice, the most advanced one for only people who are very serious in this work. This is tantric. What I'm referring to is tantric sex. Sex without lust and without the orgasm. Strictly traditional tantric sex is performed this way. It has to be, right? Because that's how you gather energy, is by retaining your essence. And you don't want to put that energy, all that charged energy, into the wrong places psychologically. So you have to do it without lust, without anger, without distractions. The 4 right efforts are active exercises that one must implement in order to attenuate and eliminate the 5 hindrances, which are sensual desire or greed, ill will or anger, laziness and fatigue, restlessness and worry, and doubt. The first right effort is anupadaya, which means prevention of unwholesome mental states. The primary practice for this is mindfulness. This is part of the way of the middle path. One must walk through life without the basis or biases and misperceptions that arise from personal preference and taste. The Buddha, after all, taught not to let one's perspective distort in such a way that the sign of the beautiful or the ugly emerges. Now, this term sign essentially means interpretation. It refers to the common misconceptions that people create around things that are either pleasing or repulsive. This way of viewing things either as good or as bad or beautiful or ugly, this critical, judgmental way of viewing things is in fact delusional, because only someone who does not recognize the thing in itself, impermanence and insubstantiality, would perceive everything with that kind of divisive labeling, with a strong stance or angle on one side or another. So the solution is to learn to see things as they are, to never let your perspective of things become distorted by passion or aversion, so by emotions like desires or fears or stigma. Right? We always have so much preference towards things, and that obscures the way that we look at them. There's so much taste. Why can't we look at something without taste? Without any preference? So the way this looks in practice is moment-to-moment self-observation throughout the day. As soon as we become triggered or enticed by something, we have to stay present and stop ourselves from creating any judgments or fantasies or labels in our mind. We don't need to compare and label things all the time, because that is precisely what daily meditation is for. If we want to understand how something really is, we practice this. So meditation is what provides us with the right understanding of things. This trains the mind to be still and civilized like a real human being. The more we restrain the five senses, the more our psychology changes and evolves to the human level. Because as we are right now, psychologically, we are just animals. We have passion, we experience intense desire, we have fear, we react, we get angry, we can become aggressive, and we have lust. This is not human nature. This is animal nature. It may seem it might seem like human nature. We call it that. We're used to that because we're so used to the way that we are. We say it's human nature to be like this, and I'm only human. I feel these things. I get lonely. I get angry, and so forth. But really, it's not human nature because it's not civilized. A real human being is an intelligent, responsive, civilized person. And by responsive, I mean they respond to every single thing. They don't react. They have self-control. We lose control. When we react, we get angry, or we get flustered or scared. We just react. We can't even control what we say or what we do sometimes, and we certainly can't control our heart rate. And we can barely control our breathing. A real human being, to our eyes, is like a Superman or a Superwoman, a super being. That really is what a human is. Completely civilized, full self-control. Just like Spock. That was actually what those Vulcan characters were based on. The idea of the super and the Uberman in occultism, these supremely civilized human beings. And those exist. That is what an enlightened person is. That's what the Buddha was. And the other major Kabirs in the religions. Now, it may seem really restricting to never let yourself indulge in desires, but on the positive end of desire, on the other side of it, once you get past sensual desire, there is a higher pleasure, higher joys. What lies there is deep serenity that comes from being unattached and untroubled by the world around. Now, the second right effort is pahayana, the removal of unskillful qualities. That's pahayana with a P. Buddhism has traditionally taught a few different methods for removing the hindrances. The first method is to replace negative qualities with virtues. The Buddha uses a simile that involves the assembly of wooden chairs to describe this. In the simile, a carpenter initially assembles a chair with coarse wooden pegs before tapping them out and replacing them with more refined-looking pegs for the final model. This means finding ways of boosting our mood when we are down, or mustering selflessness and joy and compassionate love when we are angry. For desire, the solution is to cultivate non-attachment and contentment. One practice that's pretty effective is to recognize how ordinary and common and indistinct something is compared to other similar things. This can help de-glamorize a desire when we feel unreasonably attached to something that seems rare and unique and special, but is actually more common and ordinary than we think. Another practice is to utilize repulsiveness in order to become discouraged from desire. So meditating on the consequences of a desire is one of the best ways to obtain this kind of comprehension. Restlessness and worry is attenuated through serenity meditation. Laziness can be overcome by meditating on its consequences. Doubt can be overcome with serenity insight. Serenity or insight meditation, and other forms of investigation. Your own exploration, research, and scientific exploration, Another more universal method is reflection on impermanence, which is an effective exercise for all the hindrances. Now, if these first two exercises are not effective, the next method involves fear and shame. This means that by studying the Dhamma and receiving comprehensions in meditation, the appropriate amount of concern for certain bad habits and desires should arise and inspire a high regard for your safety and well-being. With regards to shame, if you care about your own dignity, then you will only continue to feel remorse and shame every time you make the mistake of feeding that bad habit. The next strategy is distraction. It's a good idea to find various ways of distracting yourself every time you think about entertaining one of the hindrances. Sometimes it's okay to turn to less severe bad habits in order to distract yourself from very serious ones. It's sometimes okay to go out and buy some ice cream for yourself if that's what will lighten up your mood and take you off your anger, for instance. Now, the next practice is the gradual method. The fact that a student has to resort to the gradual method means that they are dealing with a very strong hindrance or a more serious addiction. The practice is simply to find a way of gradually reducing the frequency and intensity of the habit day by day or week by week. This is something the student can't give up all at once because they will either have ongoing triggers or cravings that distract them throughout the day so they can't function, or they'll experience withdrawal symptoms, and if they get back into the habit, they will relapse into these vicious or frequent cycles. And it can even make the other hindrances break out as well if they just end up turning to the other hindrances because this one can't be satisfied. And the last method for eliminating hindrances is suppression. This is more of a regular side practice that students should just incorporate in their other methods. It is simply important to be able to hold your tongue and teeth together whenever you feel triggered by what someone is saying, but you don't want to say the wrong thing and express anger. Now, this is not an absolute method. This is something you practice throughout your day in order to remain civilized around others until you have that time for yourself to transmute those emotions and impressions, because you should be self-observing this whole time. Transmute them through Qigong, in yoga, and especially meditation, because meditation leads to comprehension. The Buddha understood that suppressing negative emotions is better than letting the expression of passion run freely and uncontrollably. The hindrances are very harmful and require vigorous mental restraint in order to train the mind to be still. Now, the third right effort is upadaya. This is the cultivation of unwholesome mental states or virtues. This state of right effort means that the student has spent some time already training their mindfulness and investigation. They've been conserving and gathering their vital forces by maintaining brahmacharya, or sexual purity. They've been learning to let go of things that used to fascinate or trigger them, and are now beginning to feel enlivened with energy and presence. This is the way to increase joy. This can be felt in both the body and the mind. You may feel all the tension in your body subside. You may feel that you have more stamina, and you'll have a greater ongoing sense of clarity and enthusiasm and curiosity. When this is developed over time, enthusiasm and joy begin to settle, and then tranquility blossoms. When this wholesome state is further sustained and depleted, samadhi can be experienced. This is the final factor of the Eightfold Path. Samadhi is the deepest absorption and stillness of consciousness within itself. It's an extraordinary suffusion of well-being and happiness that is free of mental attachment. This is the suprahuman mental state. It requires the superhuman effort explained here. Samadhi in itself doesn't indicate that one is enlightened, however, until it becomes the natural and permanent state of a consciousness due to the complete liberation from egoic conditioning. The fourth and final right effort is titiya. This refers to the maintaining of wholesome mental states. This is the ability to maintain equanimity, which in this context is a beautiful and perfect balance in the mind, known as upekkha. This is the umbrella term for these kinds of mental states, upekkha. It's the profound and unattached observation of the jhanas and samadhi. Unattached here simply means undisturbed. It doesn't mean that there is no concern for others. So in the Buddhist definition, this is not what it means. It's an upright, virtuous state. So in fact, these high states of consciousness provide the mind with a greater capacity for compassion. These states of mind arise from the infusion of deep concentration and absorption and wisdom, all of which you get in the jhanas, the high meditations. So they will arise after some time in this training of the jhanas, but more so the four right efforts, because that will include time spent in solitude for meditation.